Welcome to Outdrive, folks. I'm your host, Cliff Callis, and each week I'm bringing you actionable marketing insights you can apply to reach, connect with, and convert rural American consumers. Outdrive is powered by Callis, a full-service advertising agency with a focus on marketing rural America. Callis offers a wide range of integrated marketing services, including website development, search engine marketing, social media, video, and digital. We develop strategic and creative campaigns to build your brand and your business, and you can learn more about us at ecallis.com. Now join me in the front seat as we head out on the road to success. Let's go. Hey folks, welcome to Outdrive. We've got another great story to share with you today about life and work in rural America. More and more, marketers are testing new artificial intelligence technologies and adapting them to their workflow. They're spending time and resources researching, developing use cases, and integrating them into day-to-day operations. As I mentioned a few weeks ago on our interview with Adeline, an AI chatbot, two of our senior leaders participated in MACON, a national conference focused on artificial intelligence and how to harness its potential for businesses and organizations. Today, we have one of those leaders, Kyle Meek, our digital services director, on Outdrive, and he's going to share his takeaways. Kyle is no stranger to our podcast. He's one of those few guests we've had on more than once due to his role in helping us lead our clients to business success. And we're excited to share some of the new things he's been learning and trying about AI. Welcome to Outdrive, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, Cliff.
Well, I'm excited to really dig in today to AI. You know, we talk about it in almost every episode of Outdrive. And, our guests have experiences that range from just trying it out a little bit to really into it. And so I want to get your perspective on takeaways after going to this national conference and listening to really some of the leading thought leaders in this industry. And it is becoming an industry all of its own. Certainly, we're adapting it on a marketing perspective, and we're working with clients to help them understand how to integrate it into their businesses and organizations. But there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to it, and it just seems to grow every day. But before we get into any of all that, let's just have you tell our audience just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am the digital services director at Callis. I've been here about 10 years now, just a little bit under. Started out as web developer intern, done about every role here, I think, in my time here. Bounce around. Flexibility is always great in any industry. And, this is an example right here. We're talking about AI. And when I came in, there wasn't much conversations about AI. It was kind of the background, something a lot simpler than it is now. So, but I've been here for about 10 years, as I said. And now I am part of the leadership team and lead us in production and services. And anything, on the output side is kind of in my department.
Well, and you've been awesome in helping us bring in new technologies to our agencies and then to our clients over the years. And it's one of the things I think you do best is you're open to new ideas and technology. You're a good, fast, smart learner, and you're able to pick it up, understand it, verbalize it in a way that us laymen can understand, and then integrate it for either the agency operations or our clients' marketing programs. And that's really important because, one of the things about marketing is it changes so often, so fast, and technology is driving a lot of that. But, most of our clients don't have the time or the resources to stay up on everything that's going on. And so they look to us to guide them along and to help them understand how new technologies and new marketing can benefit their organization and their business. But they really leave it up to us to, sort of vet all these different technologies. So I love the way that we have approached AI. I know I went to the first MACON conference back like 5 years ago. And then COVID hit. That set us back a little time because I know you were excited about going that following year. So I think the fact that we dove headfirst this year, both you and Megan going to the conference, I think hopefully that says a lot about us as an organization and how important we deem AI and the use of it going forward. But let's start with the basics. Tell our audience about artificial intelligence. What is AI?
So the definition probably depends a little bit on who you ask. If you ask somebody that's in industry, it's going to be a lot more nuanced. If you ask somebody who's just dabbling in it, you'll probably get a little bit more of a simple answer. But really, I think the best way to look at it is there's multiple types of artificial intelligence. We have the stuff that's been around for forever, really, but it's kind of the basic machine learning input in, and then if else, we do these two things based on what we're getting. And it learns over time and gets a little bit better, but has been kind of limited on really thinking and acting like a human. But there's been that kind of simpler machine learning type around for a long time. And it's really been in the background of all the programs we all use. But what's starting to develop now and what really we're probably talking about more is the large language model, things like ChatGPT, Claude, Llama, things like that, where they're more interactive. They have that chat interface or the actual conversation piece where you can speak to them and they have a conversation and pull from large data sets and learn and become smarter and access more and more data all the time and do more. But they really interact and talk to you like they are a human and a true artificial intelligence rather than being this background magic that you don't really see. And then the third kind that's not quite as exciting, but is very key is all the AI tools and features that are built into the platforms that you already use and continue to use. So, things like in our digital advertising space, that's Meta, Google, all of them have all these different AI tools and features and learning that's built in the background that you don't really see, but do drive innovation, personalization, improve performance, things like that. And they're important to know about too, because they are sometimes using the large language models and sometimes just using much more advanced versions of that simpler AI that's been around for a long time.
You mentioned that you'd been with the agency for 10 years. And of course, we didn't really know about artificial intelligence much 10 years ago. But when did you first become interested in it?
Oh, I would say that was probably really as a teenager kid. I've always enjoyed sci-fi type stuff, really, especially reading in that sci-fi speculative fiction realm. And a common topic in sci-fi is the kind of Turing test or artificial intelligence, where trying to determine when an artificial intelligence can pass for being human. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Blade Runner. That's an older movie and been revamped recently, but that's the whole concept of it is these androids that are pretending to be human and passing the Turing test. So I think it kind of all goes back to that classic conundrum in sci-fi that was probably my first spark and interest in it.
Well, that's pretty cool that it goes back that far. And now that you're able to be using it in a productive, efficient point of view, I think that's pretty cool. Well, MACON was a couple months ago. You and Megan went. Why?
So I think it's just a great resource to meet with presenters and like-minded people that come really from all over the world for a multi-day conference. And you just get insight, both the presenters and the people you talk to there about practical uses, insights on how to do things better, where things are going, what's the cutting edge of what they're doing. And you get really great opportunity to network with both those fellow people there, but I also had several conversations with a speaker or an expert, just hang around at a table after a conference or after a specific session, and got to learn quite a bit about it and had some interesting conversations that provided some new perspective or gave me insight into something that is more technical than I'm even in the day to day with.
I remember that first conference that I went to, and some of the speakers were pretty cool and had some really out there use cases to talk about, which kind of made it more relevant for me. How do you view the current state of artificial intelligence as to, like where we are right now?
Yeah, so that's kind of a challenging question because it's changing. So, I can tell you right now where it is, and then, this might air a week later, and I could be dating myself by a week or two by answering it. And ironically enough, during the conference itself, the big strawberry release or the 0-1, the confusing naming conventions of OpenAI came out and kind of made one of the presentation points relevant. So the short answer is changing constantly, but it's so much more advanced than a few years ago. And it does well with multimodal inputs now. So vision, speech, text, data sets. It really does well with all these different inputs all at the same time now. That's where it's really advancing. And we just did the AI podcast with Adeline, who was their newest version of a speech model that is just so much more advanced where you can interrupt them. They can pick up on humor. They can kind of pick up on your tone and things. So that's really advancing too. So really constantly changing is the short answer, but advancing a lot these last few years, really, and even just in the last few months.
The interview I did with Adeline was amazing to me, and the way that we were able to prep the chatbot so that they gave answers that were very relevant to our particular niche and the way that we view marketing and the strategy that we use. I mean, I wanted to hire her, and she had some humor in her answers. You think that I asked you a hard question a second ago when I asked about the current state? Here's an even harder one. Where do you think it's heading in the future?
That's definitely the $100 million question, or probably more like $100 billion with these companies. But so I'll answer from not necessarily my own perspective, but where the experts all seem to think it's going. The people at OpenAI, the people at Google, Microsoft, they all seem to think it's heading towards AGI, and really probably anywhere with between a year to 10 years from now, which AGI is artificial general intelligence, which means nobody can really agree upon, but it means that artificial intelligence is smarter than your average human and better at most tasks than your average human. So we're already getting close to that, but we get kind of silly answers, you get kind of hallucinations and things that don't always go right. But what we're hoping to get to is that point where it's better than the average person at most things and better than the expert at most things, really. So that's kind of where that definition gets a little gray. Is some company might put the threshold at genius level. Some people might put it at better than the average expert. So it's kind of identifying where that hits. And that's probably why you get some variance in, is it 1 year from now? Is it 10 years from now? But I think it's all heading towards AGI. That's what they want to hit, that, where it's really better than most people at most tasks.
Now, that's a little scary.
Yeah, it definitely can be. And it's a little crazy too to think about what it could become from a world input, or from a world framework. And especially, when you have some models that don't have some safeguards in place, and a lot that are operating a lot more responsibility, but it could have a pretty big impact on the world, business, and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are you seeing as the key trends in AI right now?
Well, right now, the one thing that we kind of talked about earlier that happened during the end of the conference and was kind of the disruptor of the last session was the strawberry model, which is kind of the code name of it and easier to say than the terrible naming conventions they use, but it's really getting better at critical thinking. So typically when you interact with a chatbot model or any AI model, it tries to think as fast as possible. It tries to give you the best answer as quick as possible, and it tries to please you. Sometimes it'll make things up even to a degree to try and make you happier that you're getting a great answer. And then you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. And you question it. It's like, oh, well, I might have kind of fibbed on that to try and make you happier. So what it's getting better at now is stopping and thinking and going, okay, I don't know this answer, but maybe I can figure it out. Maybe I can advance my knowledge in the section. And the reason that's really cool is because it means that it's unlocking the potential for it to actually advance fields. So right now, really what they do is pull from all the data in the world, really, and provide answers based on what's known. But it doesn't really necessarily push any boundaries. But what this critical thinking models can do is they have the potential to push fields forward. So it could be the type of AI that helps with medical advances, could help with research, things like that, and push fields forward rather than how most people treat them right now as being an excellent search engine. So that's one trend right now that's happening and gaining and getting tested out and kind of rolled out. Other one is that there's a lot more agents. So AI models that are attached to the wider world and can go out and complete small tasks or even larger tasks. So, the most famous one that rolled out was Devin, which was one of the original agents. And what it did was it was a computer software engineer, essentially. And if somebody could hire it online, they thought they were hiring a real person, ask it to complete a task, and it would work on it. And sometimes it would come back with great things. Sometimes it would come back with things that weren't even close. But that was the very earliest model. And that's probably been 2 years ago. And that just keeps on growing, where there might be a world one day where you ask an AI agent to go out to Domino's website, log in, order your pizza, get it delivered to your house, and it does everything from you telling it to do it to going through the whole process of getting pizza delivered to your door. So I think that's kind of a easy to imagine example. Along that line, Anthropic, one of the bigger competitors to OpenAI, actually released a computer use model very recently where the AI can control your full computer if you like it to. So you can ask it to do things like move your mouse around, log into different websites, and complete tasks for you. So it's getting closer and closer to these autonomous agents. So that's one other big trend. The other one we've already talked about a little bit more was more voice assistants. So I won't go into that too much, but that's getting better and better where they're communicating through voice much more intelligently. And then the other things, more autonomy. So it kind of goes with the agent things. It can do more things more alone with less oversight and do it better. More personalization. So that's where it kind of ties into marketing some. AI can take in large data sets, understand your personas, understand your customers, and provide them more what they want. So you think about the Netflix recommendation engine. That's kind of an example of personalization at scale using massive data sets. And then once again, heading towards AGI, that artificial general intelligence.
Well, as I'm hearing all that, what I see is that AI is reshaping business at all levels. What impact do you see it having on business?
So I think the way you phrased it is right. It is reshaping business at a lot of different levels. And some people see this as really this is the biggest transformation to business and technology since COVID-19, which really created digital transformation for most every business. I know it had a major impact on us, with how we manage projects and things like that. And I think that'll be how AI will impact business to a similar scale, that it's going to cause a lot of transformation in technology and business. But in general, more automation again is going to be one of the biggest driving factors of business. Smaller teams are going to become more efficient. They can do more. There's quite a few smaller companies that are getting larger and larger and from a revenue standpoint and standing out. But I think that's going to become more common where you might not need so many people doing the mundane tasks because you can have something that's trained to handle these kind of repetitive things that are time consuming, but not necessarily require a lot of critical thinking. The other area I think that's reshaping businesses data is going to become more and more and more important. I've been saying that for, it seems like forever now, at least since I've been in the marketing industry, 10, 15 years. But data just becoming more and more important and more of a premium because if you're using AI, you need high quality data. It's the classic put junk in, get junk out debate. So if you put in good data, you're going to get better things out. So I think that's just going to continue to be more of a important asset for the AI companies who are training these models and for the individual businesses that need to put their own data in or put in data that they have access to make the model more efficient and personalized to them. And then lastly, job evolution, there's going to be changes on how jobs are built out, what needs your company might have. And then on top of that, not just, replacing work so much or replacing individuals, it's more about the human AI collaboration. So how can you collaborate with AI to maximize roles you currently have, to remove mundane work and empower employees to do more critical thinking, more business decisions, work on more important things. So I think the job evolution is going to be from reshaping roles a little bit, reshaping what needs a business might have, and empowering AI is going to empower individual employees to do more.
Well, I'm guessing that about 100% of the people that are out there listening to our podcast are thinking that's a really good thing, that the best result from AI is the human AI collaboration, because I doubt if any of them want to be displaced necessarily, unless they're ready to retire. But if I'm a businessman and I'm sitting here listening to all this, what kind of questions should I be asking myself?
There's probably a lot of critical questions. It's going to depend a little bit on, your industry, the business you're doing day to day, things like that. But there's probably three key questions that anybody should ask themselves at this point is how will AI impact your team and organization? So is it going to, do you have some mundane work, some data entry or something along those lines that could be quickly replaced by an intelligent, well-trained model? Might it shift your needs a little bit from hiring? So maybe instead of looking for this role, you need to look for this role going forward, things like that. So I think look at how it's going to impact your team and organization. Another critical question is how will it impact consumer behavior? So not just your team, but how's it going to impact the people you do business with? So kind of going back to that Netflix, decision engine on you're going to like this show because you've liked these other three shows that are barely related, but we know that people who like these three shows like this one. I think people are getting more and more used to these very personalized experiences and intelligent recommendations and things like that. If you fall behind in that and your competitor doesn't, and they take advantage of that, you might lose some market share. So, how can you watch, consumer trends and trends within your industry to make sure you're not falling behind on the AI revolution or AI adoption. And then lastly is how it's going to impact your marketing strategies and budgets. Do you need new AI tools? Should you put more budget towards that and maybe pull back from a different tool you've been using? What parts of your marketing strategy can be made more efficient so you can expand into other areas? Where do you still need that human creative touch the most? So I think you need to look at areas like that from a marketing perspective as well.
Yeah, I think that's great perspective. I'm sitting here thinking about Netflix. It's a great example. I think most people utilize it, have experience with it. And I doubt that anybody even really sits there and consciously thinks, okay, this is artificial intelligence showing me these other options for viewership. I think it happens in real time. You're sitting here thinking about it, and then you go scroll from one to another, and oh yeah, I like this one. But that is AI in the background driving those things, and that is pretty amazing. You brought up marketing. What impact should we expect AI to have on marketing? Is it going to make it better?
I think it'll make it better. There's a few different ways you can look at that with marketing very specifically. One, I think marketing is one of the earliest industries to really adopt and embrace AI to a degree. So I think it's a little further along than some other industries are with its adoption. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that if everybody's using AI and everybody's using it to drive, some of the production of assets they have, there's going to be a lot more content, a lot more work out there. So I think it's more important than ever to now stand out from that. So if you're just going to put out a bunch of low quality AI work without putting in the impact, having the expertise there, having the data there, maximizing it, I think you're going to kind of fall behind in a sea of clutter potentially. So I think looking at it from a very marketing centric perspective, it's like every other business and every industry. It's AI's coming, it's changing how it's done, but I think it's more critical than ever to have that AI human collaboration to make even better results than before. So you can stand out ahead of, the people who are also using AI. So you don't get lost in that sea of clutter.
So, do you have any specific use cases in marketing that you can talk about?
Yeah. So I think one that we've already talked about a lot so far is that personalization at scale component. Lots of businesses are doing that: Spotify, Starbucks, Netflix, a lot of those big companies that you know and think of that create these convenient and uh, really these experiences that are winning customers rather than necessarily the product. I don't know how many people in the world think that Starbucks coffee is 100% better tasting than the local coffee shop, but they sure like that app and the personalization and all these other little conveniences. And that's what wins them over. So I think personalization at scale from both what's the ads they're seeing, what's the content on the website they're seeing, what's the recommendations they're getting, how does it remember and help serve you a better experience next time, customer service, all those different areas are going to have more personalization at scale using your customer data and AI. So I think that's one big area that it's having a big impact with marketing specifically. SEO and content optimization is another area that AI can really assist. Data analysis and forecasting is another area. So AI is great at looking at data and understanding data and forecasting trends. That's what a lot of that built-in AI does throughout the different software suites. Kind of an interesting one that a lot of people probably wouldn't think of is creating synthetic personas and testing things with it. So if you have a persona built out, you can build an AI model that can be a test customer and use its background to understand things. And you can have that persona participate in a discovery, or how might you respond to this? It kind of helps with the brainstorming and understanding your customers a little better because it does a great job at role playing. Automation of routine tasks is obviously something that's across any industry, but very much a part of marketing. And then I think AI can also empower creative and content development if paired right and done carefully to minimize risks.
Yeah, there are some amazing capabilities there for sure. And you brought up the creative side of what we do, which is developing new ideas and then executing them in hopefully a variety of different ways. But you also mentioned risks. And I think it's important that we talk a minute about it. What are some of the risks of using AI?
So I would say there's really four key risks to be aware of when you're talking about AI. The first would be copyright. So if the AI is trained on all this wider web of information, there's really two copyright concerns. One is the AI model you're talking to using copyrighted information. So are they trained on a book that's got a copyright on it and that author didn't give allowance to use that information? So there's some risk with the AI model might have copyrighted information inside of it. So the key there with minimizing that risk is to make sure that the AI model will identify you or protect you if it does have any challenges, because that's going to take years to work out. The second area is if you produce creative works with AI, it can't be copyrighted. So an AI is not a human. Only humans can have copyrighted works. So that's where it's kind of a key concern with creative and content development, really the creative and more things like logos or high quality things that you might want to copyright. You have to be careful if AI is involved to document that you were the main contributor. So copyright's a big area. Another one is bias. So once again, AI is trained on the whole web and all of human input and content that's put out there. But what are humans typically? A little bit to any degree. Maybe they're not blatantly, but most humans are biased in some way, shape, or form. That's, part of nature versus nurture. Your nurture, your upbringings are all going to create some bias that you probably don't even realize. So if you're training on all this information from all these people, there's potential for bias to appear, or there's potential from the AI to even learn from you and get some bias. So you really have to watch bias and make sure that you're not having any type of decision making completed by the AI come out in an inappropriate way because of bias from any source, really. So you need to check that and be careful with that. The third one would be hallucinations. So as we talked about earlier, sometimes AI can just be wrong. Just like if you did a Google search, you might get the wrong information from the first source. Sometimes AI might have some bad data in its set and it might tell you something that's wrong because it's accessing data that's incorrect, or it might even make up things from an inference that thinks is correct, but it's not really. So hallucinations can happen. So you need to, double check all the work that comes from an AI. And the last one was highlighted probably the most at the conference was inaction. So if you're not doing anything with AI, what are your competitors probably doing? They're probably using AI. They're probably becoming more efficient. They're probably using it to gain advantages. So if you do nothing with AI, you also run a risk of falling behind from a technology standpoint, from an efficiency standpoint, and really from the end, potentially a business standpoint. And maybe that's something that you can't overcome if you sit around and wait for several years while other people are pushing ahead.
I tell you what, if you're sitting there listening, it's pretty thought provoking, really, when you think about all the potential, all the capabilities, everything it's touching, the risk associated with it. There's a lot to consider. And I know that internally we have put together some philosophies, procedures, and processes for how to deal with it, how to mitigate the risks, how to use it, how to establish expectations for how we're using it, how to let our clients know what we're doing with it and how we're going to use it on their behalf and how we're going to protect them in our business and theirs. As we think about all of this to bring it all together, what would be some of your suggestions for how to achieve the successful utilization of AI?
So I'll kind of answer that in two phases. So, one, how do you kind of mitigate the risk we talked about? I think that's important to remember. I think selecting the right tools is key. That'll tie into generally how to maximize AI, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. If you're trying to mitigate risk, avoid sensitive data in projects. So be careful with what you put in. Once again, you need good data to go in, but if you're in the healthcare space, don't put personal health information in there. If you're in financial space, watch financial information, things like that. So if you're in any type of industry with sensitive data and you have access to that, just be very careful. Balance personalization and privacy. I think that's another way to mitigate risk is, personalization is great, but it can also verge into creepy if you're not careful. So if you've got data from somebody, you understand them and you might kind of have some of that knowledge about maybe what's the fear that might motivate them. It might not be the right time to use that fear motivation in advertising if they haven't disclosed that to you necessarily. So you'd have to be careful with that personalization and privacy to respect that, you have this data and not break that trust with them, because transparency and trust is important with consumers too. And the last point with balance and risk is you have to just kind of balance safety and risk. So you need to push ahead and test, but make sure you have those safeguards in place. Like we talked about, we put a philosophy, policies, a team in place to make sure we're adopting AI responsibly. So balance safety and risks. The remark that I've always heard and that they brought up is better brakes makes faster speeds. You can race faster on the track if you can brake faster before your turn. So I think that's true for most things. And I think it's very true for AI adoption is you have to have the right safeguards in place for people to explore responsibly. And it kind of goes back to the classic. You're willing to look over the edge of the mountain if you have a nice sturdy rail in front of you. If you just have a crumbling bit of ground in front of you, you're probably going to stay back from that edge. So I think people inside your organization and outside your organization are going to be more comfortable with you using AI, and your employees are going to be more comfortable using AI if you balance that safety and risk component. So I think that's how you can mitigate the risk and kind of push forward it. But in general, how do you maximize AI? I think there's three critical components. First, you need to have the right tool. So if you get the wrong AI model, the wrong AI tool, and you ask it to do a task that it's not equipped to do, you're probably going to fail. So I think identifying the right tool, which is hard because I think I saw a statistic that marketing tools alone had increased by 300% or something in the last 6 months to a year because all these new tools that are rolling out that have all these different AI capabilities rolled into them. So sometimes there'll be a great AI tool and you'll think, oh, this will be perfect, but it might not really match your use case. So I think identifying that right tool and then identifying a vendor that's trustworthy that you know is going to be around before you invest in it is an important consideration. So find that right tool as a first step to maximize AI. The second is you need to have some subject matter expertise. We talked a lot in the conference about you can make say a novice in a subject, you can make them average if you add AI on. An average person can become good. A good person can become great. But if you want to truly get the excellent world changing results, you really have to really have a subject matter expert, somebody that's good or great in that field. Because if you don't, it's just going to kind of bring you back up to the average. So it kind of goes back that if you want to stand out from a sea of clutter, you have to have that subject matter expertise to take the AI tool to the next level. And the last thing that you really need to maximize AI is that high quality data. So that's what that subject matter expertise is going to need to pair with themselves. So if you have subject matter expertise, the right tool, and then you put in the right data, and you put, prompt the tools right, you put in the right information, that's when you're really going to maximize the potential. It's really a triangle is kind of how we look at it is you have to have all 3 points filled in to get that best result.
So you mentioned all the number of tools and technologies that are just coming at us right and left. And I know you had suggested not too long ago that I check out Perplexity and give it a try, and I have been. But you have two or three AI tools that you might just recommend to our audience today that they check out and try?
Yeah, I think Perplexity is a great one. It's a very familiar tool from the perspectives. It really works a lot like that Google search generative AI experience works right now. So everybody's probably experienced that to some degree, the AI overview at the top. But Perplexity's kind of taken that and honed it and made it into its own tool that's a little bit different from that, that it provides great answers. It helps you follow up and ask the right question, which can be hard. Sometimes if you don't know much about the topic and you're doing research, that prompting of, hey, here's 3 follow-up questions that'll help me understand your question better, and then I'll give you a better result. And then it'll give you an answer to your question and then give you great sources you can look at to verify the information. So Perplexity is a great one that it works, a lot like any other search, but has some other benefits to it. The other one that's kind of the 1,000 pound gorilla is going to be OpenAI and ChatGPT. It does probably the best of a variety of different things. It's less specialized than some, but it's consistently been on the bleeding edge of what AI can do and provides a good tool if you're only going to have one to use and play with, because it kind of is that foundational tool that can do a little bit of everything. And then lastly, I would say, look into your specific industry and see if there's any tools that are gaining widespread adoption that might help you. For example, in our space, Adobe's adding a lot of different AI powered tools to help empower creative people. So, maybe that's creating short videos or producing images that don't exist to help, get the exact right response or exact right results. So I think look into those kind of industry specific tools that might benefit you the most and empower you the most.
That's all great advice. So let's see. We've talked about the current state of where AI is today and where we see it heading in the future. We've talked about some of the key trends that you're seeing right now and how AI is really reshaping business and really reshaping marketing. We've talked about some of the questions business people ought to be asking themselves about how to use it, how to make it work for them. We've talked about the risk and how businesses can mitigate those risks. And we've talked about specific ways of using AI and some different tools. As we wrap up today, what else should we be talking about as it relates to artificial intelligence?
So I think probably the biggest thing we haven't talked about that should be mentioned is that like any other technology, artificial intelligence isn't going to fix a broken process or human problems necessarily. So I think before you go and find an AI tool and say, this is going to save the day and save the world, I think you need to look at it from, is this process viable? Can we improve the process and then insert AI to help take it even further? Because if you have a broken process and you insert AI in, it's probably going to be a broken process with AI in the middle. And then the other side is if you add AI to a process and don't talk to your team or employees or get the buy-in, you'll have an AI tool that somebody might not want to use, or you'll have AI tool without buy-in or proper usage. So I think training for your employees, buy-in, getting everybody on board and everybody on the same team and looking at it the same way is key. And then make sure the process is viable first. So I think kind of looking at it from a classic IT perspective is human problems are going to be human problems, and you have to identify and fix broken processes and work with the people you're working with to make it work. Because if you go, hey, this is a broken process, let's add a new technology. Now you have new technology to figure out with a broken process. So I think just kind of looking at it from that classic IT perspective is important as well.
That makes sense. Anything else you'd like to share today?
One other thing I would just mention is, continue to experiment with and play with it. You mentioned very early on that you went to the conference a number of years ago, and Megan went with me this time. And I think the key part is you need to experiment with AI, and that goes from the top to the bottom to really push forward because leadership has to understand AI to understand the value and where it can go. And then you have to have the people who are going to use it know how to use it. So I think experimentation from all levels is key. And then I think if you get into areas where you're hitting a bandwidth from resources or you're hitting a technical barrier or a knowledge barrier, I think looking for those partners that can help you push past that is key as well.
That's great. Excellent conversation, Kyle. Appreciate all your insight, background information, your personal perspective, all very valuable. Appreciate you being here with us today on Outdrive.
No problem. It was my pleasure.
Folks, thanks for listening to Outdrive. I hope you've enjoyed our visit today with Kyle Meek, Digital Services Director at Callis. Go out there and give us a nice rating and review. We'd certainly appreciate that. Helps us to attract new guests and new visitors as well. Come back again next week, and I'll take you down the roads of rural America, where it's heaven on earth.
Thanks for taking a ride with us on Outdrive. This episode is complete, so head on over to ecallis.com for more insight you can apply to help drive your business growth. And be sure to sign up for our free monthly e-letter, Outthink, for even more helpful content about marketing to rural America. Have a great day and keep on driving.